Thank you, John. I'll spend just a few minutes on Georgia Tech. As I've told my players, we've moved on, and we do need to move on, and we've enjoyed that win for about as long as we possibly can. The number one thing as a football program, as a football team, we played football on our terms that day, and that's really the only way that we can win that football game, and that is we were very stingy with the possessions. We had over 41 minutes of possession time. We did a good enough job on defense to be able to get ourselves off the field with a couple of punts. The thing that we really needed to do a little bit better was the special teams, but it ended up winning us the game at the end of the day. Got hurt a little bit on the kickoffs. The kickoff return game was a little bit non-existent due to the fact that we just fair caught most of it because they can run extremely well. Other than that, we did everything that we had to do to possibly be able to win that football game at the end of the day. Turned it over just once. Didn't do a whole lot of things that were going to put the ball in too much jeopardy, but I thought that we played about as good as we can play against a pretty good opponent, FBS. They still have FBS caliber players. They're in a little bit of a transition, trying to find their identity on offense, but they still have some pretty good players out there that are very explosive that we saw. So everything that we did was really to make sure that we didn't have very many explosive plays against us, and that we were just methodically moving the football down the field, getting first downs, and putting ourselves in the best position at the end of the day to win the football game. As far as the Charleston Southern game, we've directed everything that we can since last night into the Charleston Southern game. Charleston Southern's a team much like we were a week ago, very hungry for a win, have played some really good opponents. All three opponents were tremendous defenses and offenses. I think they can play pretty good caliber of football. CSU is changing a little bit. They're in the midst of a little bit of a change from a run-oriented triple option offense to a air raid offense, but I think they've done a good job of being able to adapt their system to the players that they currently have. They've got two good quarterbacks. One throws it really well. One will get you in space. The other wide receivers, I think they've got a running back that can get you in a little bit of trouble as well. And they're going to spread the field with their wide receivers. If we don't do a good job of tackling, we're going to have a hard time being able to defend them. As far as their defense is concerned, they are still the same defense that we saw last year, same defensive coordinator. We've got to take a very similar approach to what we've done the last couple of weeks, and that's just take care of the football, move it methodically down the field, and play football on our terms. As far as special teams goes, is we've got to be better. We've got to be more like we played against Elon. We've got to make some personnel adjustments on our kickoff team. We've got to be able to cover the field. We've got to be able to make tackles in space. Things that I was disappointed in on Saturday, things that we can be better at. This is a crosstown rival, so I know we'll be ready for this game. It's a home game, technically an away game for us, but at our stadium, which is nice. We get an opportunity to play at home this week for being on the road for the last 2 weeks and a week for the Hurricane. Questions? Brandon is currently day-to-day. He is working through it right now. It'll probably go all the way to game time decision as to whether he does play or not, and it'll be based upon what he does in practice. Being that he is in a quarterback running position, we've got to make sure that we've got all three of the quarterbacks ready to go because we're not going to know the situation with Brandon probably up until game day.
How confident are you in Brian if Brandon cannot?
Extremely. Brian came in, did a good job of finishing the football game. Brian is a senior. He's been around the program. He's been around the offense for quite a long time, knows the operations of it, and he's got plenty of guys around him that can help him out.
Who would be the backup quarterback if Brady's out?
Currently, Murdaugh would be. Brian, being the backup to him would be Evan Chickle. Yep, Evan would probably be the next guy in.
Coach, with Brandon on Saturday, when he came out of the game, on the sidelines, he was trying to come back in, of course, but he was really firing up the guys and trying to get the fans in. And you obviously know what kind of player he is, but just seeing him do that, what did that mean to you and the players?
Well, Brandon is always that guy, no matter whether he's injured or not. He was going to be into that football game and wanted back into that football game. I had to hold him out of it. I think he had a lot of the adrenaline rushing through him at that point, and I knew that that's what was going on. But that's Brandon, no matter who we're playing. It was probably a little bit extra special because we were in his hometown, and he had a lot of fans there. And he played an outstanding 3 quarters of football and really probably win the football game in regulation if he's in there.
Coach, you mentioned that the team has moved on from this win, and Dean Jacobs said they get on the bus 24 hours and get in you it. But have you noticed the fan base? Have you noticed the school, the administration, how their opinion, how their excitement has
certainly has. I mean, just today alone, I had about 4 or 5 visitors to the office, which is nice. You know, it's nice to see. It's nice to have. It's nice to have a little bit of excitement and buzz around the program. Within those walls of Signius Hall, we've got to make sure that we're focused, though. I warned the guys last night. I said, you know, we're gonna enjoy that, but really we need to enjoy that at the end of the year. Is we need to move on. This is a very good football team that we're going to face, a hungry football team. I know that, and especially as the way the game went last year, we need to keep this game a little bit under more control than we did last year. We had 15 penalties. You know, we played a pretty good defensive ball game last year. We played okay on the offensive side. We really need to be a little bit more controlled and reserved in what we're doing.
Is that your biggest takeaway from last year that you're taking in this year, eliminating penalties and that kind of thing, or is there something else from last year that needs to be focused on?
No, absolutely is the number one thing that I was disappointed in is we had 15 penalties on both sides. The game just got a little bit out of control. We really need to clean that up, and I would imagine that it will, being that it's a different time of year. It's not the last game of the year. We've got plenty of games to play after that. I hope that there is still that spirited competition that goes on between these two teams, because that's what really makes this game exciting, being that it's a crosstown rivalry game. It feels like a rivalry game, and it felt that way last year. Towards the end of the game and midway through the game, I thought enough was enough, and we needed to clean it up.
Go for it. If Brandon can't play, how confident are you that Brian can function and lead the team to a win?
Brian can operate about every aspect of this offense. We've been game planning the last 7 or 8 hours, and everything that we've been game planning is based upon either quarterback playing. Is really he's a tough, good runner in there. He can operate and execute just fine. He just hasn't had quite the game reps, but I thought coming in relief of Brandon's going to help him out. It's going to help him out this week. Hopefully it'll slow the game down for him because he hasn't had those live reps in a game. But we won't have to do too much differently, especially, like I said, as we do have plenty of good players around him, being that the B-back is Clay Harris, and he's got Raleigh, of course, and he's got a slew of 4 or 5 A-backs.
Brian has stuck around the program for a long time without the promise of playing much. What do you know about his motivation for sticking with it?
Well, Brian came to us as a walk-on and stuck with us really as a walk-on. This year we put him on scholarship because he was the backup quarterback, which was very nice because very few of those guys, stick around for as long as Brian did. And when you stick around long enough, there's going to be a spot for you to be able to play on our football team. That's just our belief, whether it's a special teams or whether it's a niche on defense or it's a backup quarterback. But Brian really gives every single guy a walk-on a hope. He's been here every summer. He's worked his butt off to be able to get himself into good shape. You would never know the difference between him and any other guy on the football program.
Last week you said you wanted a hot start, and you did that against Georgia Tech. This is another team in Charleston Southern that's had a tough time stopping the team for the first and second quarter. How important is it to, again, have a fast start against this team?
Yeah, well, we're a different football team when we are playing with the lead, and we were a little bit more aggressive, but we were also within our wheelhouse in that first quarter against Georgia Tech. We went 3 and out on the first drive, but I felt like we had a pretty good idea of what we could go to next, and we methodically moved the ball down the field on the next drive until we got about the 30-yard line, and it was a good opportunity for us to take a shot, take a chance, and we're able to find Raleigh pretty much open for the 30-yard score right there. So that was nice. It does 2 things for you. Is it gives you a little bit of confidence in the run game, of course. It backs the defense up because you threw the ball in the end zone, which gives you a little bit more confidence in the pass game. So if we can continue to mix it up, I thought that was the best thing that we did on offense was we mixed it up enough to be able to keep Georgia Tech off of us a little bit. Is if they can dial into what you're doing, they're much better athletes than you are out there. So you've got to find a way to neutralize that, and neutralizing it with formations and plays is what we did all day long.
What should people make of the fact that the Citadel lost to Towson and Elon and beat an ACC team?
Well, those are 2 pretty good teams. You take a look at what they did this past week. Towson goes up and beats Maine and beats them pretty good, a deep playoff team in Maine. And Elon goes ahead and puts it on Richmond, a pretty good CAA team. Those are 2 really good football teams. And really, we were in both of those games, and we had a chance to win both of those games. The biggest difference is we didn't make the same mistakes. As I told you last week, I don't think we played our best game against Elon. We didn't come out and play any sort of Citadel football. We didn't play football on our terms like we did this past weekend. The Towson game, we were ahead in the 4th quarter and had our opportunities. Unfortunately, couldn't get the ball on the ground or couldn't get a turnover at some point in the 4th quarter there to really ice the game. So this is the football team that I knew I had. It's just everybody else didn't know it. And to be honest with you, both of those two head coaches reached out to me and told me that we are very proud of the performance that the Citadel had. Both Coach Trisciani at Elon and Coach Ambrose at Towson said, you guys are a top 25 team. People just don't know it because they haven't played you guys.
Off that, do the players now start to see, look, the results were there, you're close in those games on the scoreboard, but now you have a result. Are they realizing, have you seen any change in their demeanor?
Well, I think they believed, and when I truly believe what I said last week when I stood up here, is they believe they're a good football team. They know that they didn't put out their two best performances, but and especially in the Elon game, I thought we played it well enough in Towson and just didn't come out ahead. We finally put it all together and played on our terms.
Brent, you were in the coach's box when they beat South Carolina a few years ago. How did this game compare? Just the feeling in your head, on the sideline, in the locker room after?
You know, throughout the whole game, I had the same feeling like we had pretty good control over the game. We knew it was going to be a tight ball game. In fact, I was asked last week if the South Carolina game was going to be some sort of a comparison, and really my explanation was if we play it the same way, if we can be stingy with the football and make sure that we just continually get first downs, go for it on fourth down if we have to. That's how we're going to win that football game, and that's where that felt like. The difference being was in the press boxes, you were actually behind glass. You were watching it on TV. The excitement was just a little bit different up top. When I was down below, you had to control your emotions a little bit because you had to think through, and at the end of the game, you had a lot of end-of-game scenarios going through your mind of whether you were going to ice the kicker or when you were going to take your timeouts on your final drive, and how were you going to center the football for the field goal, where were you going to put the ball, how were you going to make sure that you ended up on the upper end this time around. And watching the other side operate as well is the critical mistake that was made was on an offensive penalty there, where the ball, the clock stops on the ready for play. It starts again. So that's another one that you've got to log away. So all those things were going through your mind. You didn't have time to enjoy the moment until it was finally over. And at the end of the day, I was exhausted. It was not only an overtime game, it was hot out there, but you were constantly working the game, and the stress levels were pretty high at most points. I run every day. I'm well conditioned.
Can you talk about Jacob Godek a little bit? As we've talked many times, he really struggled 2 years ago. Last year he was great, and then all three of those kicks were solid Saturday, even though one of them.
Yeah, and the one of them that he missed, that was a little bit on me. I was trying to go for the touchdown there, and we lost a little bit of yards, so I put him in a bad spot. If I was going to play for the field goal, I would have called a different play, I guess. But I had complete faith and trust in A, the play, but B, also that Jacob could make all those field goals. And it wasn't a distance thing for Jacob. It was more of a directional thing for him. And he's been solid all camp long. This by far has been his best camp, his best preseason. We haven't had to use him a whole lot. We haven't used him a whole lot. But that's not because I had any sort of doubt that he could get that game-winning field goal. In fact, I knew at the end of the day we didn't have to. All we had to do was just not lose yards in overtime, and he's going to make it and put it in the right spot to be able to make it. That's another critical mistake they made is they took a couple negative yardage plays in overtime, and that's it's a cardinal rule you try not to violate in overtime.
How dangerous is a team like CSU is winless, but takes a team like Carolina A&T, which is the country, all the way into the fourth quarter like that?
Yeah, watching A&T play a really good Elon football team, because that's probably our best sort of judgment as to how good of a football team they can be. CSU is getting better every single day that they go out and play because of the new system that they have going on. This is a dangerous football team. This is a very good football team. And like I said, when I started out, 0-3 is not really indicative of where they're going, not indicative of what their record really should be. They've played a difficult schedule, and for them, I think they're going to peak here probably more towards the middle to the end of the season.
Have you been able to build a relationship at all with Coach Denson? I know he's been there for a few months, really, and still a bit. Any interaction since he's gotten down here to the Low Country?
I have not. In fact, I've only met him once.
Any other questions? Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.